pleasant day to everyone. This is Group 2 and we are tasked to discuss archetypal criticism. But first, before defining what archetypal criticism is, let me discuss first the objectives of this discussion. First is identify what archetypal criticism is, followed by synthesize the symbolism cited in the literary work, and lastly, display cooperation for the discussion and set of the activities.
All right. Thank you for that, Ms. Crystal Barbasa. So it is sounding learnability. So let's proceed to the archetypal criticism. So what are these and what we are going to learn from this? So archetypal criticism. So its origin term is art. So as an adjective, art means chief or principal. When used as a prefix, it indicates something of the highest rank or most importance. For instances, Archangel, the highest ranking angel in the celestial hierarchy, Archenemy, the principal enemy or antagonist, Archbishop, a bishop of the highest rank. So understanding this prefix help us grasp the archetypes as primary or principal patterns or models in literature and culture. So its type, so it derived from the Latin word typus, meaning image or impression. In the context of archetype, it refers to ideals, models, or prototypes that represent universal patterns or themes in human experience and storytelling. So these types are fundamental features or motifs that recur across different stories and cultural narratives. So it's embodying essential human experiences and emotions. So archetypal in literature. Next slide, please. So, a definition, so it's recurrent universal pattern. So, an archetype is recurring universal pattern in literature and storytelling. So, these patterns evoke deep emotional responses because they tap into collective unconscious memories shared by all humans. For example, the archetype of the hero. So it resonates across various cultures because it reflects the universal journey of overcoming challenges and achieving personal growth. So emotional resonance. The power of archetypes lies in their ability to evoke a profound emotional reaction from readers. So this reaction occurs because archetypes mirror our fears, desire, and experiences, creating a strong sense of familiarity and connection. Unconscious memory. Archetypes strike a chord in our unconscious memory. So based on Carl Jung, a prominent psychologist, it suggested that these patterns are part of the collective unconscious, a set of shared stories and ideas inherent to our humans. When we encounter our archetypes in literature, they resonate deeply because they reflect their shared heritage. So, next slide, please. Yeah, here we are. Types and example of archetypes, categories, and manifestation. So, archetypes can be symbol, objects or elements that carry deeper meaning beyond their literal sense. For example, a serpent often symbolizes danger or evil, while a white dove represents a peace. So, images or image, visual representation that encapsulate the complex ideas or themes. A sunrise, for example, might symbolize a new beginning or hope. So characters, familiar character types that appear in various stories. Example, um, the example includes um, the hero. So the hero embarks a journey, faces challenges, and emerges to transform. So the mentor provide provide the guidance and support to the hero. The shadow. So the shadow represents the dark side or antagonist in the story. So another one is the plot structures. So common narrative frameworks that many stories follow. Examples include in that are the hero journeys, wherein a narrative template involving a hero who goes on an adventure, faces a crisis, and returns, transformed. Yeah. And the last one is the quest. A character embarks on a journey to achieve a significant goal, often involving trials and challenges. So they are revealed in a myth. So myths, ancient stories that conveys the values, beliefs, and tradition of a culture. So the myths often use archetypal characters and themes to explain natural phenomena, human behavior, or cultural practices rather. So religion and folklore. So sacred texts and folk tales that reflect the moral and spiritual beliefs of a community. These stories use archetypes to teach lessons, explain the origins of the world, and convey cultural wisdom. So dreams and fantasy. So in here, narrative from the unconscious mind that reveal deeper truth and universal themes. So based on Carl Jung, um, where are we again? Based on Carl Jung, it believes that archetypes manifest in dreams, symbolizing underlying psychological truths and experiences. Literature, drama, and film. So these three. So it's a creative work. So what are those? Creative works that explore human experiences and emotion through storytelling. This medium often use archetypes to build relatable and impactful narratives. So it allows audiences to connect within the characters and themes on a deeper level. So to sum up everything, archetypal criticism examines literature through the lens of these recurring symbols and patterns, recognizing how they reflect universal aspects of the human experiences. By identifying and analyzing archetypes, readers can gain a richer understanding of the underlying themes and emotional resonance within a literary work. This approach highlights the connection between different stories and cultures, emphasizing the shared human the experiences that unite us all. So that's all for that slide. So let's proceed to the next reporter.
So thank you for that insightful discussion, Mr. El Tagande. And for the further discussion about archetypal criticism, to make this brief, archetypal criticism argues that archetypes determine the form and function of literary works. A text's meaning is shaped by cultural and psychological myths, as said earlier. So, meaning to say, it focuses on patterns in literary works that commonly occurs in other literary works as well. So, these patterns include persistent images, figures, and story patterns shared by people across diverse culture. So, an archetypal critics are interested in certain myths and rituals that have a wide variety of cultures. And according to Jung, all humans shared what we call a collective unconscious. So, when we say collective unconscious, it is made up of collection of knowledge and imagery that every person is born with and shared by all human beings due to our ancestral experience. So he also believed that this collective unconscious is not directly knowable. And this is also a product of our shared memories of our ancestors. The reason why it is often discussed in psychological terms. So for the literature connection of this archetypal criticism, literature imitates the world, not the world, but rather the total dream of mankind. So when we say dream, it talks about our individual manifestation. And when we say myth, it talks about the society's manifestation in our collective unconscious. So this unconscious is a collection of memories and images comprising a racial past of pre-human experience. So this is what we call the ancestral experience that I'm talking about earlier. So in a time of uh, crisis, our psyches can tap into our collective unconscious. So, meaning to say, although we didn't experience that specific situation yet, there are manifestations that our minds have, and Jung called these symbols, imagery, and patterns as archetypes. So, it is considered that that mythologies are the textbook of archetypes because myths express forms of religions and beliefs, and they use stories to present guidance on proper ways to behave in society. Like, for example, archetypal images in mythology, the archetypal image water. So, specifically seen in rivers, it is commonly used as mystery of creation or purification as well as redemption. And another one is the archetypal symbol sun. So sun usually signifies creative energy, law in nature, as well as consciousness, thinking, enlightenment, or wisdom. And this also believe Carl Jung also believed that these archetypes or patterns are universal. That's why they found all over the world and throughout the history. And for the further discussion about the tenets and the advantage and disadvantage of archetypal criticism will be discussed by another presenter.
Thank you, Miss Barbosa. So, archetypal critics find new criticism too as atomistic in ignoring intertextual elements and approaching the text as if it existed in vacuum. So, archetypal critics says that new criticism focuses too much on the text alone and forgets how it connects to other stories and the world. While in archetypal critics believe that understanding these connections makes literature more meaningful, and they think stories aren't made in isolation but are influenced by other stories and the societies that they were written in. So by exploring these connections, we can understand stories better and see how they are related to us. Archetypal critics tries to make literature more meaningful by looking at its place in human culture and experiences. The next one is archetypal images and story patterns encourage new readers or readers to participate ritualistically in basic beliefs, fears, and anxieties of their age. In here, archetypal images are like the characters and symbols that pop up in stories, while story patterns are the plans or structures that show how stories are put together. When we read stories that use archetypal images and follow familiar story pattern, it is like taking part in a shared ritual. These stories tap into our common beliefs, fears, and worries, making us feel connected to others who are experiencing the same emotions and ideas, even if they live in different time or place. Next page, please. Next slide. This archetypal feature not only constitute the ineligibility of the text, but also tap into a level of desires and anxieties of humankind. So, when stories or archetypal features or use archetypal features, they use symbols and characters that everyone knows and connects with. These elements are deeply tied to human experiences like bravery and love because they're so familiar. They make the story easy for anyone to understand, no matter where they from. When we see heroes and villains, it reminds us of times we've faced challenges. This makes the story feel personal and reflecting our own hopes and fears. That is why it is important to everyone, or it is meaningful for everyone. Other psychological criticisms, such as Freudian, Lacanian, and other operate within the linguistic paradigm regarding the unconscious. Jungian approach to meet emphasizes the notion of image. So in here, psychological criticism like Freudian and Lacanian approaches focuses on how our minds work, especially the part we might not be aware of, called the unconscious. They look at how language and symbols affect our thoughts and behaviors. Now, when it comes to Jungian approach, it is a bit different. Instead of just focusing on language, Jungian pay a lot of attention to images. They believe that these images, like symbols and characters, are really important. They think these images connect to deep universal ideas that we all understand, even if we don't realize it. So while Freudian and Lacanian critics focus on how words and language shape our thoughts, Jungian critics think images are just as important, or maybe even more so, because they connect to our deepest thoughts and feelings in a way that words might not be able to. Next slide, please. The first one in major tenets of archetypal criticism concern with the way cycles and reiterating patterns of tradition, cultures, inborn images, and beliefs affects the literary works. It says that this is about how stories repeat certain themes and ideas from our culture and traditions. It's like seeing similar pattern or familiar patterns pop up in a different stories, showing how they affect what we write and enjoy reading. The next one is operates with the idea that certain symbols represent the same ideas no matter what the time or place. It says that this uh, believing that some symbols have the same meaning everywhere, no matter when or where you are. So, for example, a heart might always represent love, whether you're in ancient Greece, ancient ancient Egypt, or modern America. It's like having a universal language of symbols that everyone understands. Next one is authors focus on symbol to utilize in literary works in order to strike readers unconscious. This means that writers choose symbols in their stories to affect readers without them realizing it. So, they might use a symbol like a dove to represent peace, hoping it will make readers feel calm or hopeful. Even if they don't consciously think about it, it is like sneaking sneaking messages into stories through symbols. And then the last one is also deals with symbolism of nature and the cosmos. This means looking at how nature and the universe are used as symbol in stories. So, for example, a sunset might represent the end of something, like a chapter in someone's life, while stars could symbolize hope or guidance. It's about seeing deeper meanings in things like trees, mountains, or the skies. That's all. Please let's proceed to our next reporter, which is Ms. Ruth Senyal.
So here are the theory's strengths and advantages. In archetypal criticism, focuses on certain symbols and their meanings, and it almost all literature is written to convey events which mean something. And archetypal criticism looks for these meanings as well as what the symbol in the story stand for. So the first one is it acts as a powerful tool in teaching and expressing universal feelings beliefs, and ideas. So, in archetypal criticism explores the universal symbols, characters, and themes found in literature and art. These symbols and themes resonate with us because they tap into deep, shared human experiences and emotions. For example, the hero's journey archetype can found in many stories where a protagonist faces challenges, grows, and ultimately triumphs that reflecting on our own journeys in our lives. So art and literature serve as powerful tools for teaching and expressing these universal feelings, beliefs, and ideas because they draw on archetypes that speak to our collective consciousness. Second one, closely linked with psychological theories and criticism. So, archetypal criticism connected to psychology because it helps us understand the universal human experiences better by exploring common symbols and themes in literature and arts. So, additionally, by connecting literature and art to psychological theories, archetypal criticism can provide valuable insights into how these works resonate with individuals and societies on a deeper psychological level. And the last strength or advantages of archetypal criticism is it explains why literature touches deep inside the heart of the readers because this theory helps explain why literature resonates so deeply with readers by uncovering the universal symbols and themes that tap into our shared human experiences and making stories feel personal and meaningful. Next slide po. So here the theories weakness and limitation. So many critics are leery of the actual value of the archetypal approach. They seem to think it is a reductionistic formally. Also, it generally excludes other sources or criticisms. But others believe that literary individuality is ignored with so much emphasis on cycles and patterns. Not all literature contains symbolism, but some is simply written for enjoyment. And some critics argue that the theory is unnecessary because archetypal approaches to literature can also be covered in psychology, anthropology, comparative religion, and other fields. So the first one here, it is reductionistic or formalic and excludes other sources or criticism. So why it is involved the why it involved with weakness and limitation because archetypal criticism is that it can be overly simplified or formalic, focusing too much on common symbols and themes and ignoring the richness and diversity of individual works. Additionally, it may exclude other valuable sources of criticism such as historical and cultural context, limiting our understanding of literature and art. And last is this criticism has been used less frequently in recent years because archetypal criticism is that has become less popular in recent years, which means it may not be as relevant or widely accepted as other approaches to analyzing literature and art. And this could be the limit, its impact, and the influence in the academic and literary world. So that's all.
So thank you everyone for discussing what archetypal criticism is. So that will be all for the archetypal criticism, and thank you for listening.
There are many characters in Trojan Horse story by Homer. It starts with Ares, who is known as the goddess of discord. The archetype of Aries is trickster. By presenting the golden apple bearing the phrase to the fairest, she upsets the balance of power, causing conflict among the goddesses and starting the sequence of events that results in the Trojan War. Characters who are influenced by trickster archetype find it difficult to change and evolve. A similar character of Aries is Loki. In Norse mythology, Loki is known as a god of mischief. It also represents as trickster figure. Helen is one of the temptress archetypes. Her beauty is the catalyst of the war. The Greek alliance decides to attack Troy in response to her kidnapping by Paris, or elopement depending on the account. The temptress archetype, which stands for the seduction and hazard of desire, frequently leads heroes into dangerous circumstances. If you remember Delilah in the Bible, she also used her beauty on Samson to betray him, cut his hair, and strip him of his strength. Guinevere from Arthur legend, the wife of King Arthur, she has an affair with Lancelot, leading also to the downfall of Camelot. Her attractiveness combined with her bond with Lancelot makes a potent and deadly love triangle. The Prince of Troy, which is Paris, represents the lover and the fool archetype character because of his intensely desire driven decision making, especially when he chooses Aphrodite as the most beautiful goddess in return for Helen's love. He also possesses the characteristics of the fool, who is defined by his ignorance and the terrible results of the decision he makes, which sparks the conflict. A similar character to Paris is Romeo. He is the representation of a lover motivated by a deep love for Juliet. His passionate and frequently careless deeds, including his covert marriage to Juliet and eventual suicide after concluding she is dead, represent the full character. Aphrodite, the lover and the caregiver archetype, the goddess of love, Helen, represents the lover archetype by promising Paris that she is the most beautiful lady on the planet. She has traits with the caregiver as well since she fosters and guards her beauty and love. Even though she does it in a way that eventually causes a great deal of tension, Juliet's deep and passionate love for Romeo also serves as an embodiment of the lover. She also exemplifies the caregiver archetype by being prepared to leave her family to prioritize Romeo's needs. The second goddess, who also competes for the apple, is Athena, the goddess of battle and knowledge, who personifies the figure of the wise warrior, battle for the apple. As a symbol of war power and strategic thought, she offers Paris battle expertise and skill in return for being voted the most equitable or most beautiful. Another wise warrior archetype character is Mulan. She disguises as a man to take her father's place in the army. She embodies the wisdom of the warrior due to her prowess, bravery, knowledge, and strategic thinking. The last goddess that joined in the competition of the apple is Hera. She symbolizes the queen and ruler archetype as she is Zeus' wife and one of the candidates for the golden apple. She is a representation of strength and authority, yet her participation in the competition shows the pride and desire that come with being a leader.
Everyone, my name is Stephanie Braza, and today I will be discussing the uh, topic of Trojan War. So, the first is the theme. There are five themes in the Trojan War, which is first, faith and free will, which is many interpret the Trojan War as conflict between people, power, and the free will of their inevitable fate. Next is glory and honor. Stress the value of honor and glory. The story examines the price warrior must pay to get the reputation that they want via brilliant acts. The next theme of the Trojan War is power and politics. Power and politics might be an individual claim are just important factors in the conflict. It looks at the dynamics of diplomacy, leadership, and what outform conflicts over power. Next one is love and betrayal. The Trojan War discusses and involves complex relationships, including love between Paris and Helen, and the betrayal of trust, such as the sacrifices of Iphigenia by her father, Agamemnon. Last but not the least is heroism and hubris. When we say hubris, it is a term of excessive pride in, in ourselves. So heroism and hubris, heroes of the Trojan War exemplify the Greek concept of heroism, but they also demonstrate hubris, excessive pride, or self-confidence, which often leads to their downfall. Let's go to another topic of Trojan War, which is the important symbolism that being used in Trojan War. So first is the apple or the apple of these words. Apple has or have been used as a symbol of love, beauty, and wisdom in the various mythologies. In story, it symbolizes vanity and crux of the problem. Next symbolism in Trojan War is the Trojan horse. The Trojan horse represents the deception and betrayal. It also signifies the idea of that even the strongest defenses can be breached throughout a cunning strategy. Helen of Troy. Helen symbolizes beauty, desire, and destructive power of passion. Her abduction is catalyst for the war, highlighting the consequences of desire and length which people will go. Last but not the least is the gods and goddesses, which is the gods and goddesses of Trojan War represent forces of the cosmos and different facets of human nature. Their actions were uh, indicative of a worldview in which supernatural forces have an impact on human events. In the story of Trojan War, there are two famous quotes that being presented. First is beware of geeks bearing gifts, which is uh, a famous line from Virgil in referring to the Trojan horse, which is we know that the Trojan horse is an instrument that used to defeat the uh, Troy. Uh, it is represented by the Greeks as a gift but actually concealed soldier who sacked the Troy. Quotes is face that launch 1,000 ships. This phase is from Christopher Marlowe's play Doctor. Faustus refers to Helen of Troy, which the abduction by Paris is said to have sparked the Trojan War.